What if the idol who gave you the strength to live was quietly fighting a battle no one saw? Behind the lights and perfect performances, there's a silence K-pop doesn't dare to speak of. This is the story of three legendary groups, 17, SHINee, and BTS, who gave millions of LGBTQ+ fans more than music. They gave them survival. But how? And at what cost? They didn't start with a bang. No million-dollar debut, no chart-topping performances, just 13 boys, wide-eyed and eager, taking the stage to adore you. A sweet, innocent confession wrapped in pastel jackets and youthful joy. The year was 2015. In a K-pop world often obsessed with image and hierarchy, 17 felt different. They didn't just perform, they invited you in. From the start, 17 was built on a groundbreaking idea: to express themselves without shame. They weren't just singers or dancers. They were creators, producers, choreographers, directors. Every beat you hear, every movement you see, it comes from them. And that ownership changes everything. It allows vulnerability to live in their music. It creates space for tenderness, for softness, for things that elsewhere in the music industry might be considered too much. For LGBTQ+ fans, especially those who have been told to tone it down, that freedom is a lifeline. In 17, there is no single star. There is no single main vocalist who is always at the center. Their strength comes from the collective. 13 distinct personalities who don't compete but coexist. That's not common in pop music. It's not even common in life. But somehow, 17 does it. Whether it's SQ's calm leadership, Jonghyun's warmth, or Joshua's quiet sensitivity, each member brings a different color to the group's rainbow. And for LGBTQ+ fans, that diversity reflects something sacred: the right to be themselves, unapologetically. Their group culture is rooted in caring. They cry together. They hug often. They openly share their emotions, sometimes humorously, sometimes painfully. The word family is thrown around a lot in idol groups, but for 17, it's not scripted. It feels lived. That emotional honesty has created something rare in K-pop, a space where fans feel seen not just for who they admire, but for who they are. For queer fans, that space isn't just comforting, it's healing. And then there's skinship, that quintessentially Korean form of physical intimacy between friends that 17 fearlessly embrace. Holding hands, sitting on laps, hugging on stage, none of it is performance. It's just affection. Natural, uncensored, and unjudged. In a world where queer intimacy is often misunderstood, policed, or erased, seeing 17 touch each other without fear is quietly revolutionary. It says, this is okay, you're okay. It's no wonder queer fans are drawn to them, not just because of what they do, but also because of what they don't do. They don't mock, they don't alienate each other, they don't pretend to be masculine to prove a point. Instead, they lean into tenderness. They let each other be tender, silly, dramatic, emotional, and in doing so, they give their fans permission to do the same. In a world that often demands that queer people shrink, 17 acts as a mirror, saying, you're not too much, you're just enough. Even their lyrics offer quiet affirmation. Songs like Don't Wanna Cry, Hug, and Kid Alt aren't about conquest or power, but about longing, vulnerability, and the pain of growing up. Their messages aren't bound by gender or role. Instead, they focus on human connection. They speak to shy kids who are afraid to speak up, to gay teens hiding out in small towns, to adults who are finding tenderness after years of pretending. And that universality, the refusal to limit love to one kind of story, is what makes their art so profoundly resonant. For many LGBTQ+ fans, 17 is more than just a cute band. They are a turning point. The first time they saw themselves in someone on stage, the first time they felt like maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone. And when those 13 boys stood on the world stage, accepting awards, breaking records, and laughing like brothers, it felt like a shared victory. A message whispered through the screen: we're building something here, and you're a part of it. Because when 17 says carrots, they're not just talking about their fans. They're talking about you, about every soul who has ever felt like an outsider. In 17's world, nothing is too much, too soft, too bold, too emotional, too different. There's just connection, raw, bright, and real. A chosen family that doesn't ask you to change before accepting you. There's only one family that says, you belong. So tell us, is there a 17 moment that made you feel understood? Like the lyrics were written just for you? Share your story below, because someone scrolling through the comments section is probably waiting for a reason to believe they're not alone. Maybe your voice is just what they need to hear. 17 don't need to march or hashtag during Pride Month to prove they care. They never have, because everything they stand for, acceptance, empathy, unconditional love, is woven into the way they create, the way they perform, and the way they show up for their fans time and time again. One of the most quoted moments comes from Joshua in an intimate 2017 interview. When asked about love and relationships, he simply replied, "I believe that love is love. If it comes from the heart, it's true love." No fanfare, no press release, just a statement. But for queer fans, it means a lot. In an industry where silence is often safer, those short words are like a door quietly and lovingly opened. And 17 don't just say it, they live it. On stage, they consistently choose concepts that celebrate emotional openness. Songs like Don't Wanna Cry and Thanks don't portray love as a conquest or heartbreak as a weakness. They let it linger. They let it hurt. They let it be. The choreography for Don't Wanna Cry, for example, is less about strength and more about reaching out. Reaching out to something lost, someone lost, an emotion left unspoken. And in those gestures, in those quiet moments, queer fans often find themselves mirrored. Not because 17 are trying to speak for them, but because they're creating a space for all of us to exist. Their 2018 track, Thanks, is another example. Written as a letter to fans, it's filled with gratitude, vulnerability, and a yearning that many LGBTQ listeners say reflects their own silent journeys. Loving people they can't name, missing places they can't go back to, or growing up afraid of being fully understood. 17 doesn't name the pain, but they don't erase it either. And maybe that's the key. 17 doesn't preach. They don't try to represent identities they don't have, but they create space. They show empathy. They hold space. International queer fans often describe 17 as an emotional safe haven. The phrase pops up repeatedly in fan blogs, comment sections, and personal essays. A fan from the Philippines wrote, "I used to think that being soft made me weak. But seeing 17 being gentle with each other, without shame, helped me allow myself to be." Another fan from Canada shared, "When Vernon said in a live that everyone should be free to be themselves and love who they want, I cried, because for the first time, someone I looked up to was unafraid to think of me." These are not isolated reactions. They are part of a quiet movement that 17 has cultivated, whether intentionally or not. A movement where being yourself is truly the strongest form of allyship. Their relationship as 13-year-olds is also a shining example for many LGBTQ+ fans who grew up feeling like outsiders in their own families. In 17, there is no main character who hogs the spotlight. Each member has a role, a voice, a place. And that message, "You belong here, you are you," carries a huge weight for anyone who has ever been told they don't belong. It's in the way they support each other, the way they cry together without remorse. And in a world that tells boys and men not to be too deep, 17 offers something different. A softer masculinity, a gentler strength. And for queer young people, especially boys who have been punished for their weakness, that presence isn't just empowering, it's life-saving. The way 17 builds lasting emotional narratives with their fans is also incredibly powerful. They don't change their image with each comeback. They grow, and their fans grow with them. So when someone feels broken, left behind, or forgotten, they don't need a sermon. They just press play. And 17 is there. Not to fix, not to label, just to stay. So maybe that's what makes 17 different. They didn't become LGBTQ+ allies because they posted rainbow stuff. They became allies because they never closed their doors. They chose kindness and they never stopped choosing it. They chose gentleness even when it wasn't trendy. They chose each other over and over again. And in doing so, they taught us how to choose ourselves. And that's why 17 isn't just a boy band, they're a reminder that somewhere in this complicated world, there are people, artists who see you, people who won't define you, people who won't try to fix you, but they'll always be there for you until you remember your worth. Have you ever felt heard, not because someone was talking to you, but simply because 17 was smiling through the screen? If that moment has ever happened to you, let us know, because who knows, your voice might be the voice someone else has been waiting for. If 17 taught us that love doesn't need a title and kindness can change the world, SHINee showed us that sometimes just being yourself within a rigid system is revolutionary. Before love yourself became a global mantra, before idol skinship became the norm, before genderless fashion ever made its way onto the K-pop main stage, there was SHINee, and they did it. It was 2008. The music industry was dominated by an ultra-masculine image. Powerful poses, deep voices, dark suits. But on May 25th, 5 young men debuted with Replay. The song was soft, almost shy. The choreography was graceful, and the lyrics, a heartfelt, respectful confession to an older woman, Anuna, but delivered with so much emotion, so much sincerity, it touched the hearts of listeners, especially when combined with their looks. Because SHINee didn't dress like anyone else. Their debut was an explosion of soft fashion. Skinny jeans, oversized cardigans, pastel blazers, high-top sneakers, and eye-catching eyeliner. Some called it Flower Boy. Others thought it was too girly. But to many, it was a sign of something new. A K-pop group that didn't care about fitting into the mold of what masculine should be. They didn't just challenge the mold, they danced through it. Over time, that fashion sense became more than a trend. It became a signature. The way Taemin moves with cat-like elegance, the way Key blurs fashion boundaries with his bold style, the way Jonghyun sings without restraint, but with raw, painful emotion. SHINee has brought something K-pop didn't know it needed. Men who are unafraid to be beautiful, tender, and emotional. And that matters, not just to music fans, but to queer youth across Asia. Because in a society where boys are taught not to cry, SHINee cried. Where they were told to dominate, SHINee danced with vulnerability. Where they were told to play it safe, SHINee took risks, not just musically, but in meaning. The group has become a visual and emotional safe haven for fans, especially LGBTQ+ youth, who see in SHINee a version of masculinity that includes them, rather than excludes or ridicules them. And no one embodies that spirit more clearly than Jonghyun. In 2013, Jonghyun publicly supported a transgender student who was denied recognition in the classroom. He reposted her open letter and added, "I support you speaking out against injustice." It was rare for a male idol in South Korea to speak out publicly on LGBTQ+ issues, let alone in solidarity. But Jonghyun wasn't interested in silence. He was interested in truth, and his truth was soft, fierce, loud in its softness. Through his solo work, particularly his album She Is, he explored love, identity, and emotional honesty with lyrics that many fans found to be deeply queer. And while Jonghyun never came out publicly about his sexuality, his empathy was undeniable. He wasn't trying to speak for the LGBTQ+ community. He was speaking to them, not as an outsider, but as someone who understood what it was like to be out of place. SHINee never made grand statements about queerness, but their art spoke for itself. Their presence, graceful and candid, was a message. You don't have to change who you are to be loved. Whether it was the glitter on their jackets, the intimacy in their choreography, or the way they hugged on stage, SHINee never wavered, and neither did their fans. In fact, the Shoals, SHINee's devoted fandom, are known to be one of the most inclusive and emotionally connected fandoms in K-pop. Many LGBTQ+ fans have said they found their first sense of community through SHINee. Their coming out stories were soundtracked by Jonghyun's View, and Encore, and End of a Day. These aren't just songs, they're emotional bonds. They're memories of crying in their bedrooms and feeling, finally, understood. Even now, SHINee continues. After Jonghyun's death in 2017, the group took a long hiatus. When they returned, they didn't erase his memory. They honored it. They brought his voice to their concerts, made space for their grief, and continued the work of making music that heals. Because SHINee is more than a band. They're a legacy, a manifesto, a new chapter in K-pop that proves you don't have to scream to start a revolution. Sometimes, all it takes is a guy in skinny jeans and eyeliner singing about heartbreak and the meaning behind the words. Can you remember a SHINee stage that made you feel like love is beautiful, even without a label? Is there a lyric, a gesture, a moment that helped you see yourself more clearly? Because that's the power of art. It doesn't always need to be explained. It just needs to make you feel. And what about SHINee? They made us feel long before the world allowed us to. In the next section, we'll dig even deeper about how this group, one of K-pop's most artistically acclaimed acts, carry on the silent dreams of an entire generation, and how even in silence, Jonghyun's voice continues to resonate in the hearts of queer fans around the world. On December 18, 2017, the world stopped for a moment. Jonghyun, the powerful vocalist, lyricist, activist, and heart of SHINee, was gone. The news was a quiet earthquake, not just in Korea, not just in the K-pop fan community, but across continents and identities. And among those who grieved the most deeply were gay fans, because to them, Jonghyun was more than just an idol. He was a voice when they were gone, a gentle hand reaching across the screen, an artist who made tenderness comfortable in a world that demanded protection, a man who, without waving flags or chanting slogans, stood with the LGBTQ+ community, through his words, his art, and his unwavering empathy. After his heartbreaking passing, thousands of LGBTQ+ fans around the world wrote letters, lit candles, painted murals, and held silent vigils. They weren't mourning a celebrity. They were mourning representation. Rare representation. A genre that didn't demand attention, didn't demand permission, just existed. One of Jonghyun's most beloved works, his solo album She Is, remains a gentle, sparkling testament to love without borders. With its fluid lyrics, rich sounds, and overwhelming emotions, many fans and critics have pointed out the nuances that lie within. Songs like White T-Shirt, Orbit, and Aurora aren't about a gender you, but about an emotion, an intimacy that transcends labels. In an industry that often fears ambiguity, Jonghyun embraced it. With elegance, with boldness, with heart. "I want my music to make people feel comforted," he once said in an interview, "especially those who are living in hiding." For LGBTQ+ fans, those words were not only relatable but revolutionary, especially in South Korea, where even today, open discussion of queer identity in mainstream media remains limited, if not completely suppressed. Jonghyun didn't need to come out. His actions spoke louder than any label. But when he left, everything changed. For SHINee, the pain wasn't just private. It was public, raw, and brutal. The stage, once their sanctuary, became a battlefield of memories. For months, the group was silent, not just in interviews but in spirit. They had lost more than one bandmate. They lost a brother, a protector, a conscience. But somehow, they came back. Not with a flashy comeback, not with fireworks or choreography, but with a quiet, powerful bounce. In 2018, SHINee released The Story of Light, a trilogy that felt more like a eulogy than a comeback. The songs were filled with pain, longing, and unwavering love. But beneath that sadness was something else. Continuity. Not moving on. Moving forward. Songs like Our Page, written by Wonu, Key, Minho, and Taemin, are direct letters to Jonghyun. The lyrics read, "This unfinished novel, we will continue to write until the last page." It wasn't just a promise to him. It was a promise to us. That the story, the spirit he helped write, would not end when he took his last breath. And for the LGBTQ+ community, that promise is especially poignant, because SHINee didn't just mourn Jonghyun, they carried him. In every note, every stage, every moment of silence turned into a song. They never exploited his legacy. They never turned him into an icon. Instead, they continued his mission, the mission he never fully articulated, but everyone felt. The mission to make people feel less alone. SHINee's performances since 2018 have taken on a new weight. Their eyes carry more history. Their voices tremble with truths we can't always name. Yet through it all, they've always given us what Jonghyun always gave us. Space to breathe, space to feel, space to simply be. Even in their solo work, that legacy continues. Key's Bad Love is full of glam rock and raw emotional honesty. Taemin's Criminal and Advice blur the lines between masculinity and vulnerability, with styles and themes that openly challenge heterosexual norms. They're not performing queerness. They're opening up the stage for it to exist. No rainbow flags, no slogans, just sincerity, just music that doesn't require explanation. And maybe that's why Jonghyun's presence remains so close. Because SHINee never tried to fill the void he left behind. They just learned to embrace it, live with it, let it guide them to the art he would have been proud of. And that art, in turn, continues to nourish the hearts of the fans who still whisper his name when the world gets heavy. Where were you when you heard about Jonghyun's death? Did you cry? Did you feel something broken inside you? And more importantly, has SHINee helped you heal since then? Even a little? If so, we'd love to hear your story. Because sometimes the best way to keep someone's voice alive is to let it resonate through your own. In the flashy world of K-pop, where fame is often manufactured and every move is carefully planned, the seven boys stepped into the spotlight without fanfare, luxury, or any protection. On June 13, 2013, they debuted with a bang, but not the kind that caused a stir. Their first song was No More Dream. But what was their real dream? Simply to be heard. They came from Big Hit Entertainment, a small company at the time, barely a foothold in the K-pop market. There were no major TV promotions, no veteran idols to promote them, no corporate machinery to push them forward. They were seen as underdogs, too raw, too different. But BTS has something the industry can't quantify: authenticity. Unfiltered, unpolished, and deeply personal. Their early music was hard-hitting, loud, and relentless hip-hop. Tracks like NO, We Are Bulletproof, Torn 2, and No More Dream were musical rebellions against the social pressures, school violence, and rigid constraints that South Korean youth endure. They didn't romanticize the system, they denounced it. And in doing so, they touched the hearts of many fans who hadn't seen their pain reflected in popular culture before. For LGBTQ+ listeners in particular, this honesty felt different. In a country where discrimination remains taboo and often overlooked, BTS's music became a rare echo of their inner worlds. Even when they don't say it, the boys are talking about something sacred, the desire to be true to themselves, to love themselves in a world that forbids that. And what makes that desire even stronger? They write it. BTS's creative control isn't a gimmick, it's a necessity. By writing their own lyrics, shaping their own music, and choosing what they say, they've created a space for vulnerability, for subtlety, for empathy. And that makes them dangerous to a system built on perfection. But as the years have passed, the noise around them has quieted, giving way to wonder. Their simplicity has become their strength. Albums like The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, Wings, and Map of the Soul not only reflect their youth, but elevate it. Through stories of depression, anxiety, loss, and the desire to be loved, BTS began inviting fans not just to listen, but to heal. And for queer fans in particular, this invitation felt like a gentle revolution. Because they weren't just releasing albums, they were creating safe spaces. Songs like Magic Shop whispered directly into the broken pieces of your heart. Epiphany asked you to stop apologizing for who you are. Even the title of their global campaign, Love Myself, felt like it was written for people who had been told that love had made them wrong. It's easy to forget that none of this was inevitable, that the band now sells out stadiums, once slept in a cramped room, and was ridiculed for their looks, their fashion, their style. The men who are now UN ambassadors used to have to read critical comments just to see their names printed on them. But maybe that's why their story resonates so deeply. Not just the music, but the defiance and the blossoming between the cracks where nothing else could grow. Even their love songs tell a different story. BTS have always chosen gender-neutral lyrics that allow anyone, regardless of gender or who they love, to enter the story. They've blurred the lines of masculine norms in their style, body language, and openness to each other. Not in a forced, flashy way, but in a gentle way that says there's a place for you here too. And that's the important thing. They've never had to say, we support the LGBTQ+ community in fancy words, because their work has done that. They've built a world where vulnerability is strength, where honesty is heroic, and where loving yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. So let's go back to when you first heard them. Is that your personal spring day in the middle of winter? Or euphoria, when you're trying to remember what it feels like to be happy? Maybe it's No More Dream, when you realize you're allowed to be happy. Whatever that song is, hold on to it. Because it's not just a song, it's a message. That moment when the music doesn't just sound good, it feels like it understands you, it sees you. And that's the power of BTS. It's not about how loud they sing, it's about who they sing to. To the lost, the lonely, the queer, the forgotten. To everyone who's ever dared to dream, even when no one believed they should. So before we go any further, we want to hear from you. Of the 3 global legends we've explored in this video, 17, SHINee, and BTS, who do you feel has been the most deeply embraced by the LGBTQ+ community? And conversely, who has embraced us the most? Was it BTS with their Love Myself campaign and inclusive lyrics? SHINee with their quiet support and Jonghyun's fearless artistry? Or 17, who made us feel understood without saying a word? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and share a moment when one of these bands made you feel understood, safe, or even whole. Your story matters. And who knows, someone else reading your comment might have the courage to share theirs too. And if this video touches your heart, inspires you, or makes you feel a little more cared for, like it, subscribe to Rainbow Vibes, and share it with someone who needs it today. When RM praised Frank Ocean, a gay, black, Grammy-winning artist, for his courage and musical talent, he didn't issue a disclaimer or press release. It came from a quiet sincerity, the kind of acknowledgement that LGBTQ+ fans have longed to hear in K-pop. And this moment was no exception. It reflected something deeper within BTS, a culture of subtle but unwavering inclusivity. RM admired not just Ocean's music, but his authenticity. In an industry built on image, it's rare to hear an idol talk about authenticity, especially when it's wrapped in queerness. Then there's Jin, the group's oldest member, who once said matter-of-factly, "Love is natural." For many, it's a passing remark. But for queer fans in South Korea and elsewhere, it's a quiet rebellion against a culture that often demands explanations or justifications for who you love. Gentle, unassuming, yet powerful. The quiet assurance from someone in Jin's position isn't meant as support, it's whispered comfort. And then there's Jungkook and V. Among the most followed, photographed, and talked about idols on the planet, the two exude an openness that defies stereotypes. Their intimacy on stage and in everyday interactions is never hidden behind a veneer of traditional masculinity. V's captivating gaze and striking style, Jungkook's tenderness and fierce loyalty, they're gentle with each other, with their fans, with themselves. And that vulnerability has become a beacon for many LGBTQ+ fans who never thought they'd see such representation, no matter how subtle, in Korean media. It's also reflected in their music. Since their debut, BTS has repeatedly chosen to keep their lyrics open. You're never alone. You're the reason for my euphoria. The universe moves for us. These aren't random choices. In a world where so many love songs reinforce binary gender roles, BTS's gender-neutral lyrics allow queer fans to fully enter the story. Not as outsiders interpreting a song, but as themselves, ultimately at the center of it. And that inclusivity doesn't stop with metaphors. Their Love Myself campaign with UNICEF has become one of the most impactful humanitarian projects launched by any group. It encourages young people around the world to embrace self-love as an act of resilience. BTS has put their money where their mouth is, donating millions of dollars to anti-violence, suicide prevention, and mental health programs. And while they never say this is for LGBTQ+ fans, the beneficiaries know. Queer youth, often the most at risk, have found safety, acceptance, and healing through the ripple effect of the campaign. The group has also contributed to a variety of causes, championing marginalized voices. Not for clout, not for coverage, because they care. That consistency, over years and across continents, has built a trust that no marketing strategy can create. And that's the secret. BTS isn't making LGBTQ+ identity a symbol. They're not waving flags for attention. They're simply creating a world where queer fans are welcomed without question. That's why for so many LGBTQ+ ARMYs, BTS feels like a homecoming, a place where vulnerability isn't weakness, where emotions aren't flaws, where loving yourself in all your complexity is not only allowed, but celebrated. It might sound poetic to call BTS a safe space, but for millions of people, it's incredibly true. Fans have shared stories of coming out through BTS's songs, of writing letters to themselves with lyrics like mantras, of finding the courage to wear what they want, love who they want, be themselves, because BTS exists first and foremost as proof that authenticity can thrive. Their concerts have also become havens, places where queer fans can cry, dance, cheer, and even kiss each other without fear. A fan once described a BTS concert as the place where I felt like my heart could breathe for the first time. It wasn't about the choreography or the lighting. It was about emotional safety, a rare gift in this world. They never had to say, "We support LGBTQ+. They lived it, in the way they embraced fans of all shades, in lyrics that celebrated love without borders, and in moments where silence became solidarity. True allyship is never loud. It's consistent. It's humble. It's about letting someone in when no one is looking. So if you've ever listened to a BTS song on repeat on a lonely night, if you've ever seen them hug and thought, maybe tenderness isn't shameful, if you've ever felt braver because of their existence, then that's their legacy. You were never broken. You never had to step out of anything. You were enough. And perhaps that's the most powerful thing about BTS. It's not that they create space for you. It's that they remind you that that space is yours to begin with. They didn't just change K-pop. They changed lives. Through quiet courage and emotional truth, SHINee, BTS, and 17 gave LGBTQ+ fans around the world something powerful: hope. Their story touched you. Don't keep it to yourself. Hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to feel seen. And before you go, drop a comment, tell us where you're watching from. And let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.